Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. Welcome back to season 2 of Live Lunch and Learn. I'm your host, Lambros Demos, and I'm very excited, particularly this month. The focus will be on ways to manage stress and battle burnout, which is actually the topic of today's show. So with everything going on in the world today, I don't need to explain why people are under stress, why there's so much anxiety out there, burnout, etc. And real estate is actually not a small part of that. For the last year and a half or so, the market has been extremely one-sided, and home buyers have experienced a lot of anxiety. They have seen, prices escalate out of control, way sometimes beyond their budget. They've seen their dreams crushed. Maybe they were looking for a detached or semi home and had to settle for a townhouse or a condo, or maybe nothing at all. They've had to compete with other home buyers in bidding wars, maybe with 9 other buyers, 19 other buyers, sometimes 29 other buyers. So you can imagine the level of stress and anxiety that home buyers have experienced over the last year and a half, as I mentioned, and something we've called buyer burnout, which I've actually experienced firsthand with my clients as well. Over the last 3 months, however, things have turned around a little bit. I'm not going to say the shoe's on the other foot. However, sellers are now feeling a little bit of that anxiety as they're seeing houses stay on the market longer, and they've seen prices starting to drip downwards. So that can cause a little bit of anxiety as well for sellers. Maybe they've already purchased something, etc. But I'm not here today to talk strictly about real estate. I'm more going to focus on the burnout side of it. And my guest today is an expert in burnout. In fact, her nickname is Dr. Burnout. Dr. Kimberly Wilson is a retired Marine who is now a speaker, an author, an organizational psychologist, as well as an executive coach. She's on a mission to cure 5,500 women of burnout and create 100 healthy workplace cultures in honor of her grandmother's legacy. Dr. Kim is also the creator of Fired Up, which seeks to ensure that our careers accommodate our lifestyles. She's been featured in several media outlets, done several podcasts, etc. And it's an extreme pleasure for me to bring her on the show today. Welcome to the program, Dr. Kim.
Thank you so very much, Lambros. I appreciate being here today, and I'm excited to share with your audience and have a conversation with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Before we get started, however, I just want to say, even though I'm not American, the United States is our closest neighbor and our ally. So thank you for your service.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I'm curious, Dr. Burnout, how did that come about?
Well, it's interesting. I over the course of like 23 years in treating people and really looking at what I was working with, and there were just consistent themes over and over again with the women, with the men, with families, and a friend actually, Philip Michael, said, "So basically, you're Dr. Burnout." And I was like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah, and the name
I like
stuck.
that."
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's great. So tell us, what exactly is burnout? Because we use it a lot. We throw it out there like some other terms, but maybe we don't know exactly what it is. So tell us in your words, what is burnout?
Right. And it's an overused term. Like, a lot of times when people say burnout, they'll use it to mean like, "Oh, I'm so burnout on this commercial.
Mhm.
I'm burnout on Paw Patrol." And for those of you that have small children,
Yes.
uh, but in reality, it was defined by WHO as actually, which is the World Health Organization,
Okay.
as a condition that applies to work, but it can extend to other areas. But it's um, a persistent chronic stress that
Hmm.
goes unchecked, and
Okay.
you feel depleted. You lack hope. You lack the resources to deal with the stressors in your life, and when that goes unchecked, when you feel hopeless, then it goes into the stage of burnout. So there's
Hmm.
actually 12 very long stages that Dr. Herbert Freudenberger came up with to kind of help you determine like when you begin to get into those stages.
Okay. So it is an actual medical term then, the burnout, right?
Yes, yes, as it applies to work, absolutely.
As it applies to work, okay. And you mentioned stressors, and we all know that stress can do a lot of damage to the body. It can create disease, etc. So what are some of the things that somebody who's dealing with burnout, what are they at risk at for
Well,
happening to them?
definitely some gastrointestinal distress. So your gut health. A lot of
Okay.
people somaticize the symptoms in their gut. They also sometimes pull out their hair. That's a disease called trichotillomania. Um, they have a lot of nervous conditions, anxiety that can put stress on your heart and on your nervous system. If you're It's kind of, if you think about it in terms of constantly putting your foot on the gas
Mhm.
and almost at the brake at the same time, eventually that car, it creates fatigue, it makes you tired. A lot of times we gain weight because of that. Some people lose weight. So it's really interesting how for some people they overeat and for others they lose their appetite.
Right.
So sometimes there's a lot of female distress with your hormones,
Okay.
so many things.
Wow. Wow. And also it can affect businesses. So turning to the corporate side, if a number of employees are going through burnout, that would affect the bottom line, we think, right? You know,
Absolutely, because you're not as productive, you lose focus, you lose concentration, your ability to work with others, even your desire to engage with your
mhm,
work. Many
mhm.
times when I have clients, they tell me that they just sit at their desk for hours
Wow.
and lose focus because they don't have the mental capacity or even the belief that what they're doing matters, that they can effectuate any amount of change.
Right. Right. So what can be done then? So how do we deal with burnout? How can you help someone with that?
Right. Well, a lot of it starts with awareness, right? Everything starts with awareness, recognizing that something is going on.
Mhm.
And usually how people begin to understand that they're experiencing burnout is someone who loves them or cares about them notices the changes and brings it to their awareness.
Okay.
Now, I try to ensure that people, I have a system called the 6C system. And so I take them through where they begin to a process where they first see is consider where's the dysfunction and begin to target that and identify what's going wrong.
Okay.
So that's the first part of awareness. Then communication. Use your language. Make sure that you're communicating properly. You're setting appropriate boundaries. Um,
Okay.
where can you conserve where your energy, your time, um, how you're doing things, because a lot of times we are engaged in a lot of busy work.
That's right. That's right. Busy doesn't necessarily equal productive, though, right?
Absolutely. um, and to connect, so a lot of times when people are burned out they tend to isolate
Mhm.
and they begin to feel ashamed that they can't handle it, that they can't hack it, and they don't want the people around them to know that. So I encourage them to begin to rebuild connections. And for
Okay.
some, if they have difficulty getting past that shame, that connection sometimes is through organizations, through people who don't know them, so that they can kind of build up to where they were. And then they feel comfortable
Okay.
reconnecting.
That's
Uh,
cool.
t- to create, that's the next C, where you do something creative, whether that's artistic or writing, something
Mhm.
that brings you joy. And lastly, to find a way to contribute.
Okay.
Maybe you want to volunteer in some capacity. That tends to allow people to understand that there's something greater than themselves. And it gives them another outlet than just work. I think what I've seen that's one of the most dangerous things is that so many people have work exclusively. That's
Okay.
their that's what they do for so many hours a day, and then they do it when they get home, and they
Yeah.
think about it before they go to bed. I don't know if you know anybody like that.
I know several. I'm not going to mention any names, but actually, in my business, there are quite a few real estate agents that do take their work home with them, or they work from home and they live, breathe and sleep their work. So not healthy at all. So the burnout is probably at a high rate in my industry. Certainly, certainly. Yeah.
And you know what else I've seen, Lambros, is especially the pressure that the spouses places on the real estate agent or the broker,
Yeah.
because many times, unless they're an entrepreneur as well, there's that pressure to just get a job.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? They don't want to see the income going up and down. They just want some stability.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, income goes up and down. There's a saying in real estate that every morning you wake up unemployed, right? Because you don't know where that next check is going to come from.
Wow.
It's crazy, and the perception out there, as I mentioned when we were offline, is that, oh, you mentioned someone you're in real estate. Oh, you must be doing well. Well, yeah, okay, but prices aren't going up, and we get a huge paycheck, but sometimes it takes months for the next paycheck. Or let's say you're working with a buyer and now you're losing out in bidding war after bidding war. For every house that went on the market, there was at least 9 other buyers, so only one of them can win that bidding war, and the other 9 agents are, as I mentioned, SOL, right? So, and they have to keep working. So there is a lot of stress and anxiety in this business as well. And that's why I think the turnover rate is so high, especially in my area, in the Greater Toronto area, a high turnover rate.
Right. I know so many people who left another career to begin real estate and then left.
Yeah,
I'm beginning to understand that it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. And it didn't meet their expectations, obviously. So I think we've got a few questions here. Josh, thank you very much for your comments. That's awesome. So he's like, Josh is awesome. Let's go. And he's been just hammering the comments here. Take it easy on your keyboard there. Excellent. So that's a good question, though, because you did mention boundaries.
Right.
So I'd love to learn more about that. And Josh would like to know more about boundaries as well. So set boundaries how?
Right. And so, Josh, if you'll allow me, what I'd like to do is kind of set that up to provide a concept, because it's boundaries are a term that's thrown out there so much. Everybody's talking about we need boundaries, but no one really talks about how do I conceptualize boundaries in a way that's workable for me. And ironically, what I tend to do with my clients is I share with them the analogy of a home.
Perfect.
And so you have your fence, right? And that's the outermost layer.
Okay.
That's the furthest away. So those are people, and I'm talking about setting boundaries with people. These are
Okay.
people that you keep furthest away from you. You may not have a very good relationship with them. You might just know them. So you would not share a lot of intimate details with you. They can see your house. Now, keep in mind, your house represents you, and things that make you vulnerable, intimate knowledge of your home, things like that. Okay. Then you have yard people, right? So the yard is a little closer than the fence. They can see your house. They can see what's going on. They might be familiar with you, but they're probably associates because they don't really know who you are and everything about you. They're just familiar with you. They've heard about you.
But they're past the first boundary of the fence, right? So now they're a little bit closer. Yeah.
Correct. They passed the first boundary. Maybe you've known them for a little while. They've built up a little trust. And there's about nine things that I share with to determine whether or not people should be at fence level, yard level, porch, or house.
Okay.
Okay, and then the next level is the porch. That's a little bit closer, and so you can peer into the house, right? You can look in the blinds,
Yeah.
maybe look through there, see through the curtains, but
Sure.
you don't have intimate knowledge of what's going on. This might be a friend that you've had for years, but maybe not a best friend.
You haven't
Maybe not
invited them. You haven't invited them inside yet, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So,
and someone that you would let into your house boundaries, that is someone who you don't mind seeing your dirty dishes, what's wrong with you. You don't mind sharing your struggles with in business. they just have complete access to you because they've earned the trust.
Okay.
Uh, so we determine where to put people by using trustworthiness, support, communication, proximity, consistency, values, and stability. And I won't go into all of that. And
Mhm.
my assumption, Josh, when you ask the question is Josh a realtor?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Um, so begin setting the boundaries. So those are the parameters of where you want to place people, how closely you want to put them in you. But you've really got to start from your values. What
Mhm.
is important to you? Because it's so easy to begin to externalize everything. What do we need to do for others? Um, who are we responsible for? What are we responsible to? And that can be kind of challenging because if people have only known you in a state of not having boundaries or very poor boundaries, then that's how they want you to stay. And sometimes that does mean a change in the relationships and
Okay.
unfortunately maybe even ending relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's a good point as well. Is because sometimes you do have to move on from certain people if they're going to do is bring you down or not let you, reach your potential, right? Or even if they're giving you anxiety, etc. Right? Um, so that's a great point. Absolutely. Um, so I want to know because you mentioned in your media bio that you're doing this work for your grandmother's legacy. So tell us about your grandmother.
Well, my grandmother, she was 55 when she died, right? Hence the 5,500. And
Okay. Okay. I was wondering. Okay, there must be
it
a
was
reason.
like, that's a random number. Right. So she was 55. And I just got to high school when she passed away. But I watched her work tirelessly for her family, for her for her husband, who was an alcoholic, take care of his family members, take care of us as children. And she never had time for herself
Mhm.
and just saw her wither away. She ended up passing with breast cancer, but her her life was never about her.
Yeah.
And just being a woman now, I can understand how painful that must have been and how
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, but I totally understand that because there are many people, especially women out there, that put others first without, taking the time for themselves, and they think they're helping others that way, but they're actually hurting themselves. And then when they leave us too soon, then they hurt their family even more, right?
Right.
So,
So you're talking about a really good concept, and that's enabling. Like,
yes, enabling, correct. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah,
it,
absolutely.
and if we can get to the concept of teaching people to fish rather than giving them fish,
Right.
but sometimes it's so easy to just do it uh,
Hmm.
rather than share with someone how to do it.
Yeah.
Or you get a lot of external pressure. Sometimes it's about what order you are in your family, what your cultural expectations are,
Mhm.
especially for some of my Middle Eastern culture clients,
Yeah.
who there's a certain designated family member that's supposed to provide financially,
Correct. Correct.
and but you take that concept into the Western culture, and they are first generation and haven't adopted those. That's so much stress and so much pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess setting boundaries in those situations would be extremely difficult as well. So, I mean, how do you help those people? Like, what would you say to them?
Well, it's still the same principle. What are your values? What do you believe in? And how important is it? How can you respect your culture yet respect your need for boundaries? Because oftentimes when clients get to me, they're just a hair away from the state of burnout,
Right.
and they've tried everything they can. So it comes to a point where they do have to make a decision. Now, some do choose to just continue doing what they're doing and they're in severe distress. And others find a way to begin to have the conversations to create an alternate reality. So it's not easy. I'm not even going to pretend that it
Yeah.
is.
No, I can imagine that it's not. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So let's switch gears here a little bit. Tell me about Fired Up.
Well, yes, that is a retreat that's focused on helping people to develop their personal power position.
Mm,
So I've found that, like with Josh's question, set boundaries, how?
okay.
And it's real easy to say, just set a boundary. But we look at their vision, their values, their presence, and create parameters. That's the foundation to really get fired up because that gives them the confidence to walk through and navigate a number of situations so that they don't continue to repeat cycles of burnout. Because that's what I did. I've been burnt out
Mm,
3 times over 3 decades,
yeah.
because I didn't create a system. I just did some self-help and some behaviors, but I didn't have this foundation that would keep me grounded and remind me what are my vision, what are my values, how do I want to walk through this world. And when I was able to do that, it's allowed me to be pretty consistent. And I've seen it work for clients over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because that is so true. Because people they might be looking for self-help or whatever, but if they don't have that foundation there, that grounded feel that you just mentioned, as you so eloquently put it, that's so important by all means. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Great. So is this open to anybody? Fired Up? Like, how do if somebody wants to learn more about it, how do they find out?
Well, I'm trying to time the retreat. We're looking at COVID
Oh yes, okay, yes, of course, I forgot about that.
because it's more impactful in person. If
Yeah.
if things continue with the C word and
Okay.
the M word, we
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
we may have to do something virtual. But
Yeah.
we do have a 3-day masterclass coming
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
And if they could get the link in my link tree, you can find out
Okay.
all about it. If you want to find out how
Yep.
burnout's
I'll put it up right
impacting.
now. So that's your link tree slash burnout. They can find out about Fired Up there, right? And they can also find ways to contact you there through social media, etc., website. Yeah.
Absolutely. It connects to all of my socials, and we can even have a personal discovery call, complimentary.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it. Excellent. Okay, so we're at about the 25-minute mark right now. Dr. Kim, thank you so much. This has been awesome. It's been a real pleasure. Any parting words for the listeners, whoever's watching, maybe on the replay as well?
Just that I invite everyone to really consider where you want to be next year and
Mm,
begin to make those changes now because it doesn't happen until you act.
that's great. That's
So I
great.
look forward to connecting.
Yeah. Okay, thanks again, Dr. Kim. Thank you all for watching. Have a fantastic day.